They laughed when he walked in. They called security. They said he didn't belong. I'm going to show you why 3 billionaires ended up on their knees. Why a $237 million secret destroyed a family. And why the poorest man in New York became the richest in ways that money can't measure. Put your phone down. Tell everyone you need silence. Because once this story starts, you won't be able to look away. This is the true story of Isaiah Tremaine. And it's going to change how you see everything. They say you should never judge a book by its cover. But on that cold February evening at the Grandmont Estate auction on 5th Avenue in Manhattan, New York, every single person in that glittering hall was doing exactly that. They didn't see a bidder. They didn't see a man. They saw what they thought was a mistake, a disruption, a problem that needed removing. The wealthiest, most powerful people in New York City ended up standing in complete silence, some with tears running down their faces, all because of what was inside that bag. This isn't just a story about an auction. This is a story about a secret buried for 42 years, a betrayal that destroyed a family, and a moment of truth that nobody saw coming. Hello, family. Welcome to Lifetales by Sally. Please subscribe and like this video to help us reach a wider audience. It means the world to us. Feel free to share this video to friends and loved ones. Also turn on post notifications so you never miss an update. Thank you for your continued engagement. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. February 14th, Valentine's Day. But there was no love in the air at 847 5th Avenue that Tuesday evening. The Grandmont Estate Auction House, a legendary institution that had facilitated the sale of Picassos, Monets, even the private art collection of the Rockefeller family, was hosting what insiders were calling the sale of the century. The guest list read like a who's who of American power. Real estate moguls from Manhattan, tech billionaires from Brooklyn's Dumbo district, old money families whose names adorned hospital wings and university libraries across all 5 boroughs: the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, and Staten Island. But the crown jewel of the evening, the item everyone had come to see, was lot number 47, the Wellington Heights estate, 12 acres of prime real estate overlooking the Hudson River. Property value? $87 million. The estate had been in the Carrington family for 3 generations. But after the patriarch's death and a series of family disputes, it was being liquidated. And every shark in the city had come to feed. The favorite to win? Damon Carver, self-made billionaire, CEO of Carver Capital Holdings. Forbes estimated his net worth at $4.2 billion. He owned half of the commercial real estate in Queens and was rapidly buying up Brooklyn. Ruthless in business, flawless in public. The kind of man who didn't just enter rooms. He owned them before he walked through the door. Damon had come to this auction for one reason: to cement his legacy. The Wellington estate would be his crown jewel, the property that would finally get him into the circles that old money had kept him out of his entire life. He'd been preparing for this moment for 6 months. He had the financing secured. He had eliminated his competition through back-channel negotiations. Tonight was supposed to be a formality. The auction was scheduled to begin at 8 p.m. sharp. By 7:47, everyone who mattered was already inside, champagne in hand, ready for the show. And then at 7:52 p.m., the atmosphere changed. 73-year-old Isaiah Tremaine. He's a black man with silver hair, deep-set eyes that have seen too much, and a face carved by decades of outdoor labor. He wears a faded brown canvas jacket, military surplus, probably from the 1980s, with a patch poorly sewn over a tear. His boots are work boots, scuffed and salt-stained from New York winters. His pants are clean but obviously old, the kind you buy at thrift stores. And in his right hand, he clutches a weathered canvas duffel bag with a broken zipper held together by a safety pin. The conversations didn't just pause. They stopped, died mid-word, mid-laugh, mid-sip. Because Isaiah Tremaine looked like a man who had just walked in from a construction site, or a homeless shelter, or anywhere except the most exclusive auction house in Manhattan. Faces turning, eyes widening, a woman's champagne flute frozen halfway to her lips. A man in a tuxedo nudging his companion and nodding toward Isaiah with barely concealed disgust. The silence lasted exactly 4 seconds. And then the whispers began. Close-ups of mouths moving, forming cruel words we can barely hear. Woman's voice, whispering, "Is that security let him in?" Man's voice, whispering, probably looking for the soup kitchen down the street. Another voice, asterisk, someone call the manager. This is embarrassing. Isaiah stands in the doorway, snow melting off his shoulders onto the marble floor. He doesn't look angry or ashamed. He looks calm, resolved, like a man who has walked through fire and knows exactly why he's here. But here's what nobody in that room knew. Here's what they couldn't possibly know. Isaiah Tremaine hadn't stumbled into the wrong building. He hadn't wandered in by mistake. Extreme close-up of Isaiah's eyes. They're clear, intelligent, filled with purpose. He had an invitation, and he was about to change everything. A security guard, a young black man in his 20s, built like a linebacker, clearly uncomfortable, approaches Isaiah. Security guard, nervous, trying to be polite. "Sir, I'm sorry, but this is a private event. Can I help you find?" Isaiah, voice quiet but steady. "I have an invitation." The guard stops, blinks. Clearly wasn't expecting that response. Security guard asterisk. "Sir, I'm going to need to see some identification and..." Isaiah reaches into his jacket. The guard tenses, hand moving instinctively to his radio. But Isaiah pulls out a folded piece of paper, expensive linen stationery with the Grandmont Auction House seal embossed in gold. The invitation was legitimate. Sent 6 weeks ago to an address in the Bronx. A tiny efficiency apartment above a bodega on Jerome Avenue. Rent, $850 a month. Isaiah Tremaine had lived there for the past 4 years, working odd jobs, maintenance, janitorial work, whatever he could find. At 73 years old, he was still working 60-hour weeks just to survive. Security guard, reading the invitation, confused. "This is... Mr. Tremaine, this invitation is legitimate, but sir, the minimum registered bid tonight is $50,000. Do you understand what that means?" Behind them, people are starting to gather. Not to help, to watch. Like spectators at a car accident. Damon Carver has turned, champagne glass in hand, one eyebrow raised in amusement. Isaiah calmly. "I understand perfectly." Security guard, lowering his voice. "Sir, with all due respect, the registration desk requires verification of funds before you can receive a bidding paddle. If you can't provide proof of..." Isaiah asterisk. "I have proof." Isaiah sets the duffel bag on a nearby marble-top table. The sound echoes in the now silent hall. Every eye is on him. Slowly, carefully, he begins to open the broken zipper, working around the safety pin. Now here's where it gets interesting. Everyone in that room assumed they knew what was coming. They'd seen this movie before, a confused elderly man who'd wandered into the wrong place, maybe suffering from dementia, about to embarrass himself in front of New York's elite. Faces in the crowd. Some look pitying. Some look annoyed. Some look amused, already reaching for their phones to film what they think will be a viral video of an old man being escorted out. But they were wrong about everything. Because what Isaiah pulled out of that bag wasn't what anyone expected. Extreme close-up. Isaiah's weathered hands reach into the bag. But instead of pulling out money, he pulls out a clear plastic document sleeve. Inside is a yellowed piece of paper, folded carefully, and a small object that glints in the chandelier light. He set 2 items on the table. The first was an old photograph, creased and faded. The second was a small brass key, tarnished with age, hanging from a leather cord. Close-up of the photograph. It shows 2 young black men, probably in their early 20s, standing in front of a construction site. They're wearing hard hats, work clothes covered in dust, arms around each other's shoulders, smiling at the camera. Behind them, a sign reads, "Future site of Wellington Heights Estate. Groundbreaking 1979. The room went silent. Not the polite silence from before. This was different. This was the silence of people who suddenly realized they might have made a terrible mistake. The security guard leans in, squinting at the photograph. His face changes. Color drains. He looks up at Isaiah, then back at the photo. Security guard whispering, Is that you in this picture?" Isaiah quietly. 46 years ago. I was 27 years old. Best carpenter in the Bronx. Maybe in all of New York. Isaiah's finger traces the outline of the second figure in the photograph. And that's Jerome Wellington, the man whose estate is being sold tonight. My best friend. My business partner. My brother in everything but blood. A champagne glass shatters somewhere in the crowd. Someone has dropped it. All eyes are now locked on Isaiah. The whispers started again, but these were different whispers. Uncertain. Confused. Because anyone who knew their New York real estate history knew the name Jerome Wellington. Old money. Founded Wellington Construction in 1975. Built half the luxury developments in Manhattan in the 1980s and 90s. Died 6 months ago at age 74, leaving behind an empire worth hundreds of millions. Archival footage or photos of Jerome Wellington, a distinguished black man in business suits, cutting ribbons at building openings, shaking hands with mayors and governors. But nobody in that room, had ever heard that Jerome Wellington had started his career as a carpenter. That he'd once worn a hard hat and carried a lunch pail. That he'd once had a business partner named Isaiah Tremaine. Back to the auction house. Isaiah gently picks up the brass key. This is the key to the original office trailer at the Wellington Heights construction site. Jerome gave it to me the day we broke ground. He said, "Brother, this is ours. 50-50. We're building our future." Close-up of Damon Carver. His expression has shifted. The amusement is gone. Now there's calculation in his eyes. And something else, recognition? Concern? But here's where the story takes its first dark turn. Because the Wellington Heights estate wasn't supposed to be just Jerome's legacy. Isaiah's eyes lock on Damon Carver across the room. Isaiah, voice carrying now stronger. It was supposed to be ours. But if Isaiah was Jerome Wellington's original business partner, why did he end up living in an $800 apartment in the Bronx while Jerome built an empire? What happened between 1979 and now? And why, after 46 years, did Isaiah finally decide to walk back through those doors? The answer to those questions is going to shock you. But first, we need to go back. Back to 1979. Back to when two young carpenters from the Bronx made a promise to each other. A promise that would haunt them both for the rest of their lives. 1979, the Bronx. If you weren't there, you can't imagine what it was like. The entire neighborhood was fighting to survive. Buildings abandoned. Families struggling. But in the middle of all that hardship, there was Isaiah Tremaine and Jerome Wellington. They met in vocational school in 1975. Both 19 years old. Both from families that didn't have much, but had enough love to fill a stadium. Isaiah was from Mott Haven. Jerome was from Morrisania. Two neighborhoods that were supposed to be rivals. But these two? They became brothers the first day they met. Isaiah was an artist with wood. He could look at a raw piece of oak or mahogany and see the final product before he ever made the first cut. Jerome had the business mind. He could read blueprints like poetry, calculate costs in his head faster than most people with calculators, and talk to investors like he was born wearing a suit. For 4 years, they worked for other people's companies. Learning, saving, planning. Every Friday night, they'd meet at Isaiah's mother's apartment in Mott Haven. Miss Lorraine Tremaine, a woman who worked double shifts as a nurse at Lincoln Hospital, but always had sweet potato pie waiting for her son and his best friend. And at that kitchen table, over sweet potato pie and cheap coffee, they built their dream. Wellington and Tremaine Construction. 50-50 partners. Equal in everything. By early 1979, they had saved $23,000 between them. Not much, but enough for a down payment on their first real job. A small residential renovation in Staten Island. If they did it right, if they came in under budget and ahead of schedule, they'd have enough profit to bid on bigger projects. The Staten Island job took 3 months. They worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. And when it was finished, the client was so impressed she referred them to her brother, a real estate developer named Marcus Chun who was planning something ambitious. Wellington Heights. 12 acres overlooking the Hudson River. 6 luxury homes. A development that would cater to New York's growing class of wealthy professionals. Price tag, $1.2 million. It was the biggest opportunity two 27-year-old carpenters from the Bronx could ever dream of. Marcus Chun took a chance on them. He secured the financing. Isaiah and Jerome brought their savings. Every penny they had, $27,000 total. It would cover materials for the first phase. If they could complete the first 2 homes and sell them, the profits would fund the rest of the development. Construction montage. Sweat. Labor. Sunrise to sunset. 2 young men building their future with their hands. For 8 months, Isaiah and Jerome lived on that construction site. They worked until their hands bled. They solved problems that would have stopped bigger companies. And slowly, magnificently, Wellington Heights began to rise from the dirt. The first house sold in November 1979 for $380,000. The profit after costs? $72,000. Isaiah and Jerome split it down the middle. $36,000 each. More money than either of them had ever seen in their lives. the two friends embracing, tears in their eyes. Isaiah sent 20,000 home to his mother, paid off her mortgage, made sure she'd never have to work double shifts again. Jerome invested his share back into the business. And together, they prepared for phase 2. By spring of 1981, 4 of the 6 homes were complete. Wellington and Tremaine Construction was becoming a name people knew. They had contracts lined up, a reputation for quality. The future was so bright it was blinding. And then everything changed. Because there was one person who had been watching their success very closely. Someone who wanted what they had. Someone willing to do anything to take it. That person was Jerome Wellington's older brother, Nathaniel Wellington. Nathaniel Wellington was 30 years old in 1981. He'd gone to college, City University of New York, got a degree in business administration. While Jerome was learning carpentry, Nathaniel was learning corporate law, networking, making connections in Manhattan's business world. And Nathaniel had always believed he was destined for more than the Bronx, more than his family's modest circumstances. He'd distanced himself from his roots, changed his accent, even lied about where he grew up when talking to his Manhattan friends. Newspaper clipping or recreation. Wellington Heights development draws attention from major investors. When news of Wellington Heights' success started spreading, Nathaniel saw an opportunity. His little brother, the one he'd always looked down on for choosing manual labor, was suddenly sitting on a gold mine. And Nathaniel wanted in. Recreated scene. Nathaniel visiting the construction site for the first time in years, looking at the development with hungry eyes. In June 1981, Nathaniel showed up at the Wellington Heights site with a proposal. He'd found investors in Manhattan, serious money, who wanted to expand the project. Instead of 6 homes, they could build 20. Instead of a small development, they could create an entire luxury community. The profit potential? Millions. Isaiah and Jerome looking at the proposal, excitement on Jerome's face, caution on Isaiah's. Jerome was thrilled. This was validation. Proof that 2 kids from the Bronx could play in the big leagues. But Isaiah was suspicious. He'd met Nathaniel before. He'd seen how Nathaniel looked at his brother, not with pride but with something darker. Resentment. Envy. I asked Nathaniel directly, "What's in this for you? You never cared about Jerome's business before. Why now?" Nathaniel, flashback voiceover, smooth and confident. "Isaiah, I'm family. I want to help my brother succeed. These investors trust me. They'd never deal directly with people from our background. But with my connections, my education, my network, we can build something incredible together." Isaiah's face, clearly not convinced. Isaiah wanted to say no. He wanted to tell Nathaniel to take his investors and his condescending attitude and leave. But Jerome wanted his brother's approval so badly. Wanted to prove that the little brother who chose carpentry over college had made the right choice. Wanted Nathaniel to finally see him as an equal. Jerome's face, hope, longing, desperation for family acceptance. So Isaiah agreed. Against his instincts. Against the warning bells ringing in his head. Because Jerome was his brother too. And you don't abandon your brother. Legal documents being signed. 3 signatures. The formation of a new company. Wellington and Tremaine Construction was dissolved. In its place, Wellington Brothers Development Corporation. The ownership structure? Jerome Wellington, 45%. Isaiah Tremaine, 45%. Nathaniel Wellington, 10%. But here's what Isaiah and Jerome didn't know. Couldn't have known. Because Nathaniel had buried it in page 47 of a 60-page legal document, in language so dense that even lawyers would struggle to decode it. Clause 47B, Management Authority. In the event of any dispute regarding company direction, business decisions, or financial matters, the Wellington family, defined as all members sharing the Wellington surname, would hold majority control in any company vote. The implications dawn. Isaiah has no family members in the company. Jerome has one, Nathaniel. Together, the Wellington brothers control 55% of votes. Isaiah had just signed away his equal partnership. And he didn't even know it. Not yet. Construction continuing. Months passing. The development expanding. For 6 months, everything seemed fine. The expansion was ahead of schedule. The new homes were even more luxurious than the originals. Isaiah and Jerome were working harder than ever, but the dream was still alive. And then, on February 3, 1982, Nathaniel called a company meeting. Isaiah arrived at the office trailer to find Nathaniel sitting behind the desk, Jerome's desk, with 3 men in expensive suits. Lawyers. Tense scene recreation. Isaiah standing, confused. Nathaniel behind the desk, looking almost apologetic but determined. Nathaniel, flashback voiceover. Isaiah, sit down. We need to talk about the future of this company. Where's Jerome? Nathaniel. He's outside. He knows about this meeting. Isaiah, the investors are concerned. They feel the company needs more professional management. Someone with formal business education. Someone who understands the Manhattan market. They're requiring, a restructuring. Papers sliding across the desk toward Isaiah. The restructuring was simple and devastating. Isaiah Tremaine would be bought out of his 45% ownership stake for $50,000. He could remain as a paid employee, foreman of construction, at a salary of $35,000 per year. Or he could walk away with the $50,000 and forfeit all future claims to the company. Isaiah's hands shaking as he reads the document. Isaiah, voice breaking. This is my company. Jerome and I built this from nothing. You can't. Nathaniel, flashback voiceover, cold now. Actually, I can. Clause 47b gives the Wellington family majority control. Jerome and I have voted. The decision is made. I'm sorry, Isaiah. This is just business. The office trailer door opening. Jerome standing outside in the snow, unable to meet Isaiah's eyes. This is the moment that would define the next 42 years. Isaiah looked at his best friend, his brother, the man he'd worked beside for 7 years. And Jerome. Jerome wouldn't look back. Close-up of Jerome's face, tear tracks frozen on his cheeks, shame and guilt written in every line. Jerome, tell me you didn't agree to this. Tell me you fought for us. Long silence. Snow falling. Finally, Jerome speaks, voice hoarse. He's my brother, Isaiah. My blood. I can't choose between you. You just did. Isaiah walking away from the construction site. The camera follows him from behind as he trudges through the snow, carrying nothing but his tool belt. He doesn't look back. Behind him, Jerome collapses to his knees in the snow, sobbing. Isaiah took the $50,000. He walked away from Wellington Heights, from the company he'd built, from the brother he'd loved, and he never spoke to Jerome Wellington again. But the story doesn't end there, because what happened next was even worse. And it would take 42 years for the truth to finally come out. Wellington Brothers Development Corporation thrived. Nathaniel's investors poured money into expansion. Within 5 years, they'd completed 3 more luxury developments across Manhattan and Brooklyn. By 1990, the company was worth $27 million. By 2000, over $200 million. Photos/footage of Jerome Wellington's rise, award ceremonies, ribbon cuttings, magazine covers. He's successful, wealthy, respected. But if you look closely at his eyes, there's something missing. A heaviness. A guilt that never quite fades. Jerome Wellington became one of New York's most successful black entrepreneurs. A role model. A philanthropist. He donated millions to vocational schools, housing projects, community centers in the Bronx. People said he never forgot where he came from. Close-up of a community center with a plaque. Wellington Community Center. Founded by Jerome Wellington in memory of the Bronx that raised him. But every donation, every scholarship, every building he funded, it was an attempt to fill a hole that couldn't be filled. Because Jerome Wellington knew the truth. He'd betrayed the one person who'd believed in him from the beginning. Isaiah Tremaine took his $50,000 and tried to start over. He opened a small carpentry shop in Mott Haven in 1983. But the economy was brutal. Competition was fierce. And without Jerome's business connections, without the Wellington name that had started opening doors, Isaiah was just another carpenter in the Bronx. Montage of Isaiah's declining circumstances, the shop closing, taking on smaller jobs, moving to cheaper apartments. The $50,000 ran out by 1988. Isaiah was 57 years old, working maintenance jobs at minimum wage. His mother, Miss Lorraine, passed away in 1995. Isaiah lost his apartment in 2001 during the post-9/11 economic crisis. For 6 months, he lived in a homeless shelter in the South Bronx. But Isaiah never begged, never complained, never sought out Jerome or Nathaniel for help. He carried his betrayal like a weight, but he carried it with his head up. He worked. He survived. And he waited. For 42 years, Isaiah Tremaine lived in poverty while Jerome Wellington lived in luxury. For 42 years, Isaiah watched from a distance as the company he'd helped build became an empire. For 42 years, he said nothing. Close-up of Isaiah's weathered hands, holding that old photograph of him and Jerome at the groundbreaking. Until Jerome Wellington died on August 14th, 6 months ago. And Isaiah received a letter that changed everything. An envelope, yellowed and thick, addressed to Isaiah Tremaine in shaky handwriting. Because Jerome Wellington had spent 42 years living with his guilt. And in his final days, dying of pancreatic cancer in a hospital room in Manhattan, he'd made one last decision. He was going to tell the truth. All of it. And that letter, the one Jerome wrote 3 weeks before he died, is what brought Isaiah to the auction house on Fifth Avenue that cold February night. Because Jerome Wellington's last will and testament contained a clause that nobody except Isaiah knew about. A clause that would destroy his family's fortune and save the man he'd betrayed. Fade back to the auction house. Present day. All eyes on Isaiah. But before I tell you what was in that letter, you need to understand one more thing. You need to know about Damon Carver. Because Damon isn't just a billionaire who came to buy an estate that night. Damon Carver is Nathaniel Wellington's son, Jerome Wellington's nephew, and Isaiah Tremaine's sworn enemy. Extreme close-up of Isaiah and Damon, staring at each other across the auction house floor. 42 years of history crackling between them like electricity. Now do you understand why this isn't just about an auction? This is about blood, legacy, justice, and revenge 42 years in the making. Snap back to the auction house. The tension is suffocating. Isaiah stands at the marble table, the photograph and brass key laid out before him like evidence in a trial. Damon Carver has moved forward, his expensive shoes clicking on the marble floor with predatory precision. Let me tell you about Damon Carver. Born Damon Wellington in 1978. Nathaniel Wellington's only son. Raised in a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, a world away from the Bronx where his father grew up. Private schools. Summer homes in the Hamptons. Everything money could buy. Nathaniel had built an empire on the back of his brother's guilt and Isaiah's stolen work. And he'd raised his son to believe that empire was rightfully theirs. Damon grew up hearing one story over and over. How Nathaniel had saved his brother Jerome from a bad business partner. How Isaiah Tremaine had been dead weight. How the family's success was purely Wellington blood and brilliance. You have some nerve coming here tonight. The crowd has formed a loose circle around them. Security guards hovering uncertainly. The auctioneer frozen on his platform. Everyone sensing that something massive is about to explode. I have every right to be here. More right than you. My uncle's estate is being sold tonight. My family's legacy. You're nobody. You walked away 40 years ago with a payout. You have no claim. I walked away with $50,000 after building a company worth millions. Your father stole my life's work. He manipulated legal documents. He betrayed a partnership and destroyed. Damon cutting him off aggressive. You signed the papers. You took the money. You left. Everything that happened after that, that was Wellington blood and Wellington work. You don't get to show up decades later and... Isaiah reaches back into his duffel bag. The movement is so sudden that security guards tense, hands going to their radios. But what Isaiah pulls out isn't a weapon. It's another document sleeve. This one contains a thick envelope, sealed with red wax. Jerome knew what your father did. He knew for 42 years. And 3 weeks before he died, he wrote me this. Isaiah breaks the wax seal. The sound echoes in the silent hall. He removes several pages of handwritten letter, shaky but legible, and one additional legal document. This is the moment everything changes. Because what Isaiah is holding isn't just a letter of apology. It's a legal document that Jerome Wellington filed with his attorney 2 weeks before his death. A codicil to his will. An amendment that Damon Carver and the Wellington family had no idea existed. Close-up of the document header. Codicil to the last will and testament of Jerome Marcus Wellington. Filed January 28, 2025. My dear friend Isaiah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I'm finally free to tell you the truth. I was too cowardly to speak while I lived. What my brother did to you in 1982 was not just unethical. It was criminal fraud. The clause he buried in our partnership agreement was inserted without your knowledge or consent. I discovered this in 1987 when I hired an independent lawyer to review our company documents. I found proof that Nathaniel had bribed our original attorney to add Clause 47B after you'd already reviewed the documents. The The version you signed was not the version that was filed with the state. I have kept this evidence for 38 years. I kept it because I was a coward, because I couldn't destroy my brother, because I chose blood over brotherhood. But I can't take this guilt to my grave. You deserved better. You deserved everything. Several women in the crowd have hands over their mouths. Men are leaning forward, riveted. This is no longer an auction, it's a reckoning. But here's where it gets even crazier. Because Jerome didn't just write a letter of apology. He rewrote his entire will. I, Jerome Marcus Wellington, being of sound mind, do hereby amend my will as follows. Item 1. The Wellington Heights estate, valued at approximately $87 million, is to be transferred in full ownership to Isaiah Tremaine, in restitution for the theft of his rightful share of Wellington Brothers Development Corporation. Gasps throughout the room. Someone's phone clatters to the floor. Damon, voice strangled. That's not possible. The estate is part of the Wellington Trust. It's been in probate for 6 months. The will was already read. This is. Filed legally with Jerome's attorney, Marcus Chin Jr. Yes, the son of the man who gave us our first big chance, exactly 15 days before Jerome died. A properly executed codicil supersedes all previous will provisions in New York state law. A distinguished Asian man in his 60s steps forward from the crowd. He's been watching silently, and now he speaks. That's correct. I'm Marcus Chun, Jerome Wellington's attorney for the past 23 years. I filed this codicil per Mr. Wellington's explicit instructions. It's legally binding. Mr. Tremaine is the rightful owner of the Wellington Heights estate as of Jerome Wellington's date of death. Damon stumbles backward like he's been physically struck. His assistants rush to support him. His face is a mask of shock and rage and disbelief. No, my uncle wouldn't, he couldn't. That estate is worth $87 million. That's my family's. Mr. Wellington was very clear in his instructions. He told me, and I quote, I stole 42 years from Isaiah Tremaine. I can't give him those years back, but I can give him what should have always been his. The foundation we built together. The dream we shared. It belongs to him. The room exploded. Conversations erupted. Phones came out. People were calling lawyers, calling journalists, calling anyone who needed to hear this story. Because this wasn't just a local drama anymore. This was about to become the biggest legal and moral story in New York real estate history. Chaos. Overlapping voices. Security trying to maintain order. Damon Carver's face cycling through emotions, denial, rage, calculation. This isn't over. I don't care what document you have. I'll tie this up in legal battles for years. You're 73 years old, living in the Bronx. You think you can fight my legal team? I'll bury you in motions and appeals until. Until what, Damon? Until I die? Until you can outlast me like your father outlasted my claim 42 years ago? That's the Wellington way, isn't it? Outlast. Outspend. Outlawyer anyone who stands in your way. Isaiah steps closer to Damon. Despite the age difference, despite the wealth difference, Isaiah is the one who looks powerful now. But I'm not here just for the estate. I'm here to make sure everyone knows what your family did. Jerome made sure of that too. Isaiah pulls out one more item from the envelope, a USB drive. Jerome recorded a video confession 2 weeks before he died. 47 minutes of him explaining everything. The fraud. The manipulation. How he discovered what Nathaniel did in 1987 and kept silent. How guilt ate at him for decades. How he tried to compensate by donating to the Bronx, by building community centers, by doing good, but knew he could never truly make it right until he told the truth. I have the original video in my office. Per Mr. Wellington's instructions, copies have been provided to the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and New York One News. They're embargoed until tomorrow morning. But after tonight, after this auction, the story goes live. The full confession. The evidence of fraud. Everything. Damon's knees actually buckle. His assistants catch him. For the first time, the confident billionaire looks like what he is, a man whose entire world is collapsing. Can you imagine what Damon Carver was feeling in that moment? His entire identity was built on being a Wellington. On the empire his father and uncle built. On the legacy of Black excellence and entrepreneurship they represented. And now, in front of New York's elite, he was learning it was all built on theft and lies. The auctioneer clears his throat awkwardly. Ladies and gentlemen, given these developments, I'm afraid we need to suspend the auction until legal counsel can review the status of Lot 47. The Wellington Heights estate cannot be sold if its ownership is in dispute. It's not in dispute. That codicil is fraudulent. My uncle was dying on heavy medication. He wasn't in his right mind when Mr. Wellington was evaluated by 2 independent physicians. Both confirmed his mental competency. Both signed affidavits. I have those documents as well. Your uncle knew exactly what he was doing. He was finally doing the right thing. Long silence. Damon staring at Isaiah with pure hatred. You've wanted this for 40 years. This revenge. Isaiah, shaking his head slowly. I never wanted revenge, son. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted the truth. Your father stole my partnership and got away with it because he had lawyers and money and I had nothing. But Jerome? Jerome carried that guilt until it killed him. That's not revenge. That's just tragic. Isaiah carefully gathers his documents, the photograph, the brass key. He puts them back in his duffel bag with the same careful precision he used to take them out. The auction is suspended. The estate is mine legally. But I'm not done yet. Because there's one more thing everyone needs to understand. One more truth that needs to come out tonight. Isaiah turns to face the full crowd now. Every person in that room is hanging on his words. Nathaniel Wellington died 3 years ago. Rich. Respected. His reputation intact. He never faced consequences for what he did. But Damon, you're still here. And you have a choice to make tonight. The auction house has gone completely silent again. This is a different silence. Not shock, but anticipation. Isaiah stands in the center of the room, dignified despite his worn clothes, holding the moral authority of someone who has suffered and survived. Jerome's will did something else. Something I didn't expect. Something I'm not sure I deserve. Isaiah pulls out another section of the legal document. In addition to transferring ownership of Wellington Heights estate to Isaiah Tremaine, I leave him a choice. He may claim full ownership and do with the property as he wishes. Or, and this is my hope, he may choose to convert the estate into the vision we originally planned together in 1979. A community, not for the wealthy, but for the people we came from. Affordable housing, vocational training centers, a place where young people from the Bronx and Brooklyn and Queens can learn trades, build futures, lift themselves up the way Isaiah and I once lifted each other. Emotion cracking through Isaiah's stoic exterior. His voice breaks slightly. If Isaiah chooses this path, I have established a trust fund of $12 million to support the conversion and ongoing operations. But I leave the decision to him. It's his property, his choice, his chance to show the world what we should have built together 42 years ago. Isaiah, my brother, I'm sorry I failed you. Please don't let my failure stop you from succeeding where I was too weak to try. Tears streaming down Isaiah's weathered face now. No shame in them. Just decades of pain finally acknowledged. Can you even comprehend what that moment meant? For 42 years, Isaiah had been erased from the story. For 42 years, he'd been forgotten, dismissed, pushed aside. And now, in front of everyone who mattered in New York, Jerome Wellington was saying, "You were right. You were the better man. And I'm trusting you to finish what we started." Isaiah wipes his eyes with the back of his hand, takes a shaky breath, then turns to Damon. "Your father stole from me. Your uncle enabled it. But you, Damon? You're not responsible for their sins. You were raised on their lives, but not believing. So here's the choice I'm giving you tonight. I'm 73 years old. I'm not going to live long enough to see Jerome's vision fully realized. I need help. I need someone who understands real estate development, who knows the legal systems, who has the connections to make this happen. I need a partner. I'm offering you a choice, Damon Wellington Carver. You can fight me in court for years. Spend millions on lawyers. Drag your uncle's name through the mud, trying to prove he was incompetent. Destroy whatever good he tried to do at the end of his life. Or you can help me build what your uncle wanted, what your father prevented. A true legacy. Not for the Wellingtons or the Tremaines, but for the communities we all came from. You get no ownership, no financial stake, but you get something more valuable, the chance to make this right, to break the cycle, to be better than your father. Damon staring at that extended hand like it's a snake. His assistants whispering urgently in his ear. His lawyer pulling him aside. But Damon's eyes are locked on Isaiah's face. This is the moment that separates this story from every other revenge tale you've ever heard. Because Isaiah Tremaine isn't interested in revenge. He's interested in redemption. Not for himself, he already has that. For the Wellington family. For Damon. For everyone who's been trapped by the sins of their fathers. Long, agonizing silence. Damon's face working through 1,000 emotions. Pride. Shame. Anger. Calculation. And finally, something that might be hope. Why would you offer me this? After everything my family did to you. Because Jerome asked me to. Not in the letter. He didn't know you'd be here tonight. But in my memory of who he was. The 27-year-old kid I knew? He would have made this offer. He would have chosen bridge building over wall building. He would have chosen community over revenge. I'm just finishing what he started. Damon's eyes filling with tears now. The billionaire armor cracking to reveal the human underneath. My father told me you were a failure. A bitter man who couldn't handle success. He said you took the buyout money and drank it away. That you blamed everyone else for your mistakes. I know what he told you. Lies are easier than truth. But now you know the real story. Now you have a choice. You can become your father, protecting lies with lawyers and money. Or you can become who your uncle tried to be at the end. Someone who tells the truth and pays his debts, even when it costs everything. Damon looking around the room. Every eye on him. Every phone probably recording. This moment will define him for the rest of his life. Whatever he chooses will be who he is forever. Damon Carver was 47 years old. A self-made billionaire, yes, but built on his family's foundation. A foundation that was crumbling beneath him in real time. He could fight. He could run. He could preserve his pride and his fortune. Or he could do something he'd never done before. He could admit his family was wrong. And try to make it right. Asterisk. I need time to think about this. I can't just. Take all the time you need, son. Jerome waited 42 years to make this right. I can wait a few more days for you to decide who you want to be. But then, something shifts in Damon's face. A decision crystallizing. His hand stops trembling. And he grasps Isaiah's hand firmly. No. No more waiting. My family has done enough damage by delaying, by hiding, by choosing comfort over truth. If I'm going to do this, if I'm going to try to make this right, I need to start now. Tonight. Before I lose my courage. The handshake. 2 hands, one weathered and scarred by manual labor, one soft from office work and wealth, clasped together. The photograph of young Isaiah and Jerome is visible on the table beside them. Past and present connected. And just like that, in a room full of New York's elite, on a cold February night, something impossible happened. 2 men, separated by wealth and circumstance and 42 years of family sin, chose to build instead of destroy. Chose community over revenge. Chose the harder path because it was the right path. The crowd beginning to applaud. Slowly at first, then building. The security guard who first confronted Isaiah is clapping, tears on his face. The auctioneer is smiling. Even some of Damon's assistants look moved. But this isn't the end of the story. Because choosing to do the right thing and actually doing it, those are 2 very different challenges. And what happened over the next 6 months would test both men in ways they never imagined. Because the Wellington family didn't just quietly accept this. Damon's cousins, his board of directors, investors who had stakes in Wellington properties, they all came after him. And after Isaiah. With everything they had. News montage. Headlines appearing rapid fire. Headlines asterisk. Wellington empire built on fraud? Shocking deathbed confession rocks New York City real estate. Billionaire's uncle admits decades-old betrayal of business partner. From poverty to property, Isaiah Tremaine's stunning legal victory. Damon Carver breaks with family legacy, partners with father's victim. The story exploded. Within 24 hours, Jerome Wellington's video confession had been viewed 8 million times. Within a week, Isaiah Tremaine was the most talked-about person in New York. Everyone wanted to interview him. Book deals. Movie offers. But Isaiah? He declined them all. He had work to do. Isaiah and Damon meeting in a modest office. Not some luxury corporate suite, but a simple space in the Bronx with folding tables and architectural plans spread everywhere. They called their project the Wellington Tremaine Community Initiative. 12 acres overlooking the Hudson River, converted into affordable housing, vocational training centers, small business incubators, and community spaces. The goal? To create pathways out of poverty for 500 families. Architectural renderings, beautiful, dignified buildings. Not charity housing, but something people would be proud to live in. But the backlash was immediate and vicious. Damon's board of directors at Carver Capital Holdings called an emergency meeting. They wanted him removed as CEO for jeopardizing company reputation and pursuing non-profitable ventures. Boardroom. Hostile faces. Damon standing alone at the head of the table. I understand your concerns, but I'm not stepping down. My uncle built his fortune on stolen work. I won't continue profiting from theft. This project isn't optional. It's restitution. Board member number 1, angry. Your personal guilt doesn't obligate this company to throw away resources on charity projects. We have shareholders. Responsibilities. Damon asterisk. And I have a conscience. Something I'm learning is more valuable than stock prices. The board member's face purpling with rage. Other members shifting uncomfortably. 3 board members resigned that week. Major investors pulled out. Damon's net worth dropped by $600 million in a month. But he didn't blink. He kept working with Isaiah, kept pushing the project forward. Isaiah working late nights in the office, reviewing plans. Damon beside him, both men exhausted but determined. But the Wellington family? They weren't done fighting. Damon's cousins, Nathaniel's brother's children, filed lawsuits claiming Jerome wasn't competent when he amended his will. They dragged Isaiah into depositions, questioning every detail of his relationship with Jerome, trying to paint him as a manipulative opportunist who'd preyed on a dying man. Courthouse steps. Lawyers. Protesters holding signs supporting Isaiah. Other protesters supporting the Wellington family. Media circus. The legal battles were brutal. For 8 months, Isaiah spent 3 days a week in courtrooms or lawyers' offices, reliving the betrayal from 1982 over and over. Damon's family called him a traitor. Society pages that once celebrated him now ran hit pieces questioning his judgment, his loyalty, his business acumen. Magazine covers with unflattering photos of Damon. The billionaire who lost his mind. Carver Capital in crisis. When woke goes wrong. The criticism cut deep. Damon had spent his entire life building his reputation. Being the exception. The black billionaire who made it. The success story. And now he was being torn apart by his own community for betraying his family, by the business world for choosing morality over profit, by everyone. Damon alone in his Brooklyn Heights brownstone, staring out at the city lights. He looks older than he did 6 months ago. Tired, but not defeated. People keep asking me if it's worth it. If I regret partnering with Isaiah. If I wish I'd just fought to keep the estate in the family and moved on. And the answer is no, because I'm sleeping better now than I have in years. I didn't even realize I was carrying my family's guilt until I started trying to make it right. But the real attack came from where they least expected it. Because someone discovered that Isaiah, desperate and poor in the 1990s, had signed a document that might destroy everything. A shabby office in Queens. A private investigator hired by the Wellington family cousins, sorting through boxes of old documents. His name was Marcus Levin, private investigator, specialized in digging up dirt for legal battles. The Wellington cousins had hired him to find anything at all, that could discredit Isaiah Tremaine or invalidate Jerome's will. Marcus pulling a document from a box, reading it, eyes widening. A slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. And in a storage unit in Queens, in a box of documents from a bankrupt law office, Marcus found it. A promissory note dated November 1994. Signed by Isaiah Tremaine. Close-up of the document. Legal language. Isaiah's signature at the bottom. In 1994, Isaiah's carpentry shop was failing. He'd taken out a loan, $15,000, from a private lender to try to save his business. He'd promised to repay it within 2 years with interest. But the shop had closed anyway in 1995. And Isaiah, broke and desperate, had never paid the loan back. The document shows the lender's name. N. Wellington Capital LLC. The lender? A shell company owned by Nathaniel Wellington, Damon's father. Nathaniel had known Isaiah was struggling, and he'd given him a loan, not out of generosity, but as a trap. Courtroom. Wellington family lawyers presenting the promissory note to the judge. Wellington family lawyer asterisk. Your Honor, this document proves that Isaiah Tremaine owed Nathaniel Wellington $15,000 plus 20 years of compound interest. By our calculation, that debt now amounts to $63,000. Mr. Tremaine never paid this debt. He is a debtor to the Wellington family. This proves he had financial motivation to manipulate our client Jerome Wellington in his final days. Isaiah, sitting at the defendant's table, had bowed. He'd forgotten about that loan. Or maybe he'd tried to forget. The Wellington lawyers were brilliant. They weren't just trying to collect an old debt. They were trying to paint Isaiah as a con man. Someone who had a pattern of taking money from the Wellington family and never paying it back. Someone who couldn't be trusted. Damon's face as he hears this for the first time. Confusion. Betrayal. Doubt creeping in. Damon, whispering to his lawyer. Did you know about this? Damon's lawyer asterisk. No. Isaiah never mentioned any debt to your family. Damon looking across the courtroom at Isaiah. Isaiah won't meet his eyes. This was the crisis moment. Because Damon had given up everything, his reputation, his board's confidence, his family's support, based on believing Isaiah was the victim, the good guy, the honest man wronged. But now there was evidence that Isaiah had taken money from Damon's father and never paid it back. Evidence that maybe Isaiah wasn't as innocent as he seemed. Courtroom recess. Damon confronting Isaiah in the hallway, cameras everywhere. You owed my father $63,000? And you never thought to mention this? When I was defending you to my entire family. When I was destroying my reputation for you. I forgot about it. That sounds like a lie, but it's true. That was the worst year of my life. I was losing everything. I took the loan because I was desperate. When I couldn't pay it back, your father never came after me. I thought he'd written it off. I didn't know he was keeping records, waiting to use it against me. But you knew you owed him money. You knew you took from my family. $15,000. Yes. I took a loan I couldn't repay. Your father stole 45% of a company worth millions. Which debt matters more, Damon? The one I couldn't pay because I was poor? Or the one your father could have paid but chose not to because he was greedy? Damon faltering. The math is irrefutable. But trust is shaken. Why didn't you tell me? When we became partners, why didn't you disclose this? Because I genuinely forgot. Because when you're poor, Damon, you have so many debts, so many failures, so many things chasing you that you learn to bury them just to survive. I'm not proud of not paying that loan back. But I was barely surviving. Your father? He was thriving while I drowned. This is the moment where most partnerships would have shattered. Where Damon could have walked away, claimed he'd been deceived, protected what was left of his reputation. And for about 30 seconds, standing in that courthouse hallway with the whole world watching, he considered it. But then he remembered something his uncle Jerome had said in that video confession. One line that had stuck with him. The easiest thing in the world is to find reasons to abandon people. The hardest thing, and the only thing that matters, is finding reasons to stay. My father gave Isaiah a predatory loan when he was desperate. $15,000 with terms designed to trap him. Isaiah's crime was being poor and unable to pay it back. My father's crime was stealing millions and having the resources to get away with it. I know which debt matters more. And I know who I'm standing with. Damon stepping next to Isaiah, united front. Flashbulbs exploding. The Wellington family lawyers looking shocked. Furthermore, I'm personally paying off Isaiah's debt to my father's estate. $63,000. Consider it paid in full. Now can we please stop pretending this is about money and admit it's about my family's pride? Isaiah's eyes filling with tears. Not just relief, gratitude. Recognition that Damon had just chosen him over blood, reputation, everything. That moment, that choice, changed everything. Because the media narrative shifted instantly. It wasn't about whether Isaiah was perfect anymore. It was about whether the Wellington family was willing to acknowledge their imperfections. And Damon had just shown he was. Social media responses flooding in. Public opinion turning sharply in Isaiah and Damon's favor. Twitter quotes appearing on screen asterisk. Damon Carver just showed what real integrity looks like. The Wellington family is trying to destroy both their own nephew and an old man over $15,000? Disgusting. This is what reparations actually looks like. Not just money. Acknowledgement. Action. Respect. Within a week, the Wellington family's legal challenge collapsed. Public pressure was too intense. And more importantly, the judge ruled that Jerome's will and codicil were valid. Isaiah Tremaine was the legal owner of Wellington Heights estate. The war was over. Mr. Tremaine, what's the first thing you'll do with the property? Isaiah, into the microphones. Break ground. We start construction in 30 days. They called it the Wellington Tremaine miracle. Because what Isaiah and Damon built over the next 18 months wasn't just a construction project. It was a movement. Groundbreaking ceremony. Isaiah in a hard hat again. This time new, clean, with Wellington Tremaine Initiative printed on it. Damon beside him. both men shoveling dirt together. The 12-acre estate was redesigned completely. The original mansion? Converted into a vocational training center. Carpentry, plumbing, electrical work, HVAC repair. Everything Isaiah had learned in his life, he made sure the next generation could learn too. Young people, teenagers and young adults, predominantly black and brown, learning trades from master craftspeople. Hands working wood. Installing electrical panels. Learning skills that would give them six-figure careers. The grounds? Divided into affordable housing units. Not projects. Not shelters. Dignified apartments with rent calculated as a percentage of income. 240 families from the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens were given priority. Families who'd been priced out of the neighborhoods they'd lived in for generations. Families moving into beautiful, modern apartments. Children playing in green spaces. Community gardens being planted. And the centerpiece, the thing that made Isaiah cry when he saw the architectural renderings, was a building they named the Lorraine Tremaine Community Center. Named after Isaiah's mother, the woman who'd worked double shifts so her son could dream. A beautiful modern building with floor-to-ceiling windows. Inside, a library, computer lab, after-school programs, job placement services, counseling centers. But here's what made this project different from every other affordable housing development in New York. Isaiah and Damon didn't just build buildings. They built pathways. Every resident of Wellington Tremaine had access to free vocational training. Every graduate of the training program was guaranteed job placement assistance through Damon's business network. And every person who completed the program and worked for 3 years was given a path to homeownership, not rent, ownership of their apartment. Visual, statistics appearing on screen. 94% employment rate among graduates. 67% homeownership within 5 years. $847 million in wages earned by program graduates. The project cost $147 million. Damon Carver personally contributed $85 million, most of his liquid wealth. The rest came from grants, donations, and a revolutionary financing model where residents would eventually own their units through rent-to-own agreements. Isaiah and Damon working side by side on the construction site. Both men in hard hats. Both men's hands dirty. Equal partners. And Isaiah, 74 years old now, with a heart condition and arthritis in both hands, he worked on that site every single day. Not as a supervisor, as a carpenter. Teaching young people how to measure twice and cut once. How to read wood grain. How to build something that would last. Isaiah showing a young black man, maybe 19 years old, how to use a level. The young man's face lighting up with understanding. Mr. Isaiah would tell us, your hands can build your future. Nobody can take your skills from you. Nobody can steal what you know how to do. He taught us more than carpentry. He taught us dignity. The Wellington Tremaine Community Initiative opened on October 15th, 22 months after that night at the auction house. The opening ceremony was attended by 2,000 people. The mayor was there. Senators. Business leaders. But the guests of honor? The first 240 families moving into their new homes. Ribbon-cutting ceremony. Isaiah and Damon holding giant scissors together. Behind them, the beautiful community they built. But there's one more part of this story you need to hear. Because on the day of the grand opening, Isaiah did something that shocked everyone one final time. The grand opening ceremony. Hundreds of people seated in rows of white chairs. A stage with a podium. Isaiah approaches the microphone, moving slowly now. Age and hard work have taken their toll, but his eyes are still clear and bright. Thank you all for coming today. 2 years ago, I walked into an auction house on 5th Avenue looking like I didn't belong there. Most of the people in that room thought I was lost. Or confused. Or worse. Some uncomfortable shifting in the crowd. Several people who were at that auction are here today, looking ashamed. But I wasn't lost. I was exactly where I needed to be. Because 42 years ago, my best friend and I had a dream. We were going to build something together. Not just for profit, though we wanted to make money, don't get me wrong. We wanted to build something that mattered. Something that would lift people up the way we'd been lifted up by our families and our community. That dream got stolen. Not by Jerome. Jerome was a victim of his brother's manipulation as much as I was. But by greed. By someone who saw our partnership as a threat to his control. By someone who believed that success was a zero-sum game where only one person could win. For 42 years, I carried that theft like a weight. Some days it was anger. Some days it was bitterness. Most days it was just sadness. Sadness for what we could have built together. Sadness for a friendship that was destroyed. Sadness for a dream deferred. But today, standing here in front of this community we've built, I realized something. The dream wasn't destroyed. It was just delayed. Jerome carried his guilt, and it made him a better man at the end of his life than he was in the middle. Damon carried his family's legacy, and it made him brave enough to choose truth over comfort. And I carried my pain, and it made me remember why the dream mattered in the first place. Not for me, not for Jerome, but for everyone who comes after us. For the young people who'll learn trades in these buildings. For the families who'll raise their children in these homes. For the community that will thrive here long after I'm gone. Camera panning across the faces in the crowd. Young and old, black, Latino, Asian, white, all united in this moment. So today, I want to do something. Today, I want to make sure this dream never gets stolen again. Today, I'm signing over ownership of the Wellington Tremaine Community Initiative to a perpetual community trust. Not to me, not to Damon, not to any individual who could sell it or profit from it or betray it. The residents of this community will elect a board. That board will make decisions about the property. The vocational programs will be funded in perpetuity by an endowment. The housing will remain affordable forever. Not for 10 years or 20 years, but forever. Because this isn't about me or Jerome or the Wellington family or revenge or justice. This is about building something that lasts. Something that can't be taken away. Isaiah Tremaine, who had spent 42 years in poverty, who had finally reclaimed an $87 million property, who could have lived out his final years in luxury, was giving it all away. Again. But this time, not because it was stolen. Because it was right. Jerome Wellington tried to give me back what was taken from me. But what was taken wasn't property or money. It was purpose. It was partnership. It was the belief that we could build something meaningful together. And now, thanks to Jerome's final act of courage and Damon's choice to honor it, we have. Not me and Jerome. Not me and Damon. But all of us. Together. Visual, standing ovation. People on their feet. Tears streaming down faces. Damon pushing through the crowd to get to the stage. Isaiah, you crazy old man, you didn't tell me you were doing this. Laughter through the tears. Isaiah shrugging with a small smile. If I'd told you, you would have tried to talk me out of it. Or worse, you would have offered to match my contribution, and you've already given enough. You know what this means, right? You're going to die with nothing again. After finally getting everything back, you're giving it away. Isaiah, looking out at the community, at the buildings, at the families. I'm not dying with nothing, son. I'm dying with everything that matters. Can you say the same? Damon unable to speak. Just nodding. Then embracing Isaiah. Two men from different generations, different backgrounds, different starting points, united in purpose. That moment, that embrace, became one of the most iconic images in New York City history. It was on the front page of every newspaper. It went viral across every social media platform. It became a symbol of what's possible when people choose redemption over revenge, community over profit, truth over comfort. But the story doesn't end there. Because 6 months after the grand opening, something happened that nobody expected. Something that proved the Wellington Tremaine Initiative wasn't just a nice story. It was a revolution. Montage of news coverage from various sources over the following months. News anchor #1*. 3 major real estate developers in New York have announced similar community-first housing initiatives, directly citing the Wellington Tremaine model. News anchor #2*. The Tremaine Standard is now being used by housing advocates to pressure developers to include affordable housing and job training in luxury developments. News anchor #3*. Vocational schools across the country report a 300% increase in applications, with many students saying they were inspired by Isaiah Tremaine's story. Isaiah and Damon had accidentally started a movement. Other developers, some motivated by genuine inspiration, others by public pressure, began incorporating community benefit requirements into their projects. The term Wellington Tremaine Agreement became shorthand for development deals that prioritize community needs alongside profit. City council meetings. Community activists citing the Wellington Tremaine model. Politicians proposing legislation based on it. But perhaps the most unexpected ripple came from within the Wellington family itself. Because Damon wasn't the only Wellington who'd been watching. There was someone else who'd been silent throughout the legal battles, throughout the public scrutiny, throughout all of it. Jerome Wellington's daughter, Naomi Wellington Price. Naomi, a black woman in her early 40s, elegant, professional, with kind eyes that look remarkably like her father's. Naomi Wellington Price was 43 years old, a corporate lawyer in Manhattan. She'd grown up with wealth and privilege, the beloved daughter of Jerome Wellington. She'd stayed silent during the legal battles because she was torn between loyalty to her father's memory and loyalty to the family that wanted to fight Isaiah. Naomi standing outside the Lorraine Tremaine Community Center, looking up at the building with tears in her eyes. But watching Isaiah give away the property, watching him choose community over personal gain, something broke open inside her. Because she'd found something in her father's personal effects. Something he'd meant for her to find. A letter addressed to her, to be opened 1 year after his death. Naomi sitting in her father's old study, reading a handwritten letter. Her hands shaking. My dear Naomi, if you're reading this, then Isaiah has hopefully reclaimed what I stole from him. I'm sure the family fought him. I'm sure they painted him as an opportunist or a con man. I'm sure they tried to protect the Wellington name. But baby girl, our name isn't worth protecting if it's built on lies. I need you to know the truth. I need you to finish what I started. In my private safe, the one in the basement of the Manhattan house, the one only you know about, there are documents. Financial records showing exactly how much profit Wellington Brothers made from the properties Isaiah and I built together. By my calculation, adjusted for inflation and investment growth, Isaiah's 45% share would be worth approximately $237 million today. I don't have that much liquid capital, but I've left instructions with my attorney. Upon my death, my personal art collection, worth approximately $93 million, is to be sold. The proceeds go to Isaiah Tremaine, in partial payment of the debt I owe him. I know this will shock you. I know the family will fight it. But Naomi, I'm counting on you to make sure it happens. You're the only one I trust to do what's right, even when it's hard. Even when it costs you. I love you. Make me proud. Make this right. Dad. Naomi lowering the letter, face wet with tears. Then her expression hardening with resolve. Naomi Wellington Price went to war with her own family. She found the documents her father had hidden. She contacted Marcus Chin Jr., Jerome's attorney. And she filed a motion to execute the terms of her father's secret directive. The sale of his art collection and the transfer of funds to Isaiah. More legal battles. More headlines. Wellington daughter sides with father's partner against family. Jerome Wellington's secret fortune left to Isaiah Tremaine. The Wellington family fought her viciously. They claimed she was mentally unstable, that Isaiah had manipulated her somehow, that her father's letter was a forgery. But Naomi was a lawyer. She knew how to build an ironclad case. And she had Damon, her cousin, now her ally, standing beside her. Naomi and Damon in court together, united against the rest of their family. It took 14 months. But finally, the judge ruled in Naomi's favor. Jerome Wellington's art collection was sold at auction. Ironically, at the same Grandmont auction house where this entire story began. The sale brought in $98 million. The same opulent haul. But this time, Isaiah is in the audience as a guest of honor, not an intruder. And on a Tuesday morning in April, almost 3 years after Isaiah had walked into that auction house with nothing but a tattered bag and a dream of justice, he received a check for $98 million. Partial payment, Jerome's words, for the debt the Wellington family owed him. Isaiah staring at the check. Not with triumph. Not with satisfaction. With something sadder and deeper. Vindication that came too late to heal all the wounds. Reporters asked Isaiah what he would do with the money. Everyone expected him to retire, to finally live in comfort, to enjoy the luxury he'd been denied for 42 years. But Isaiah? Isaiah had other plans. Isaiah at a podium, looking older and more tired than he did 3 years ago. But his eyes are still clear. Still determined. I want to thank Naomi Wellington Price for her courage. She didn't have to honor her father's wishes. She could have stayed silent, kept her family's approval, lived comfortably with the lie. But she chose truth. And that choice, that's the real Wellington legacy. Not the buildings or the money. The courage to make things right, even when it costs everything. Naomi in the audience, crying openly. I'm 76 years old now. My doctor tells me I've got maybe 5 years left, probably less. My heart isn't what it used to be. My hands shake more than they used to. And I'm tired. I'm so tired. But I'm not done yet. Because $98 million is more money than I ever dreamed of having. More than I need. More than I can spend in 5 years or 10 years or however long I have left. So I've made a decision. I'm establishing the Jerome Wellington Memorial Fund. $90 million will be placed in an endowment to do 3 things. First, full scholarships for vocational training for any young person in New York City who can't afford it. Not just at Wellington Tremaine, but at any accredited program. We're going to fund 10,000 scholarships over the next decade. Because Jerome and I learned our trades from teachers who believed in us. We're going to make sure the next generation has that same chance. 10,000 scholarships. $45 million endowment. Zero-cost vocational education. Second, legal aid for anyone who's been cheated in business partnerships. Free lawyers for people who can't afford to fight corporations or wealthy families who've stolen from them. Because if I'd had a good lawyer in 1982, maybe I wouldn't have lost 42 years. Maybe someone else won't have to lose what I lost. Wellington Tremaine Legal Defense Fund. $30 million endowment. Justice for the powerless. And third, a program to help formerly incarcerated people learn trades and find employment. Because I know what it's like to be written off. To have doors slammed in your face. To be judged before you ever get a chance to prove yourself. We're going to give second chances to people everyone else has given up on. Second Chance Initiative. $15 million endowment. Redemption through skill. The remaining $8 million? That's for me. To live comfortably for whatever time I have left. To maybe take a vacation. I've never been out of New York State, can you believe that? 76 years old, and I've never seen the ocean. Maybe I'll go see the ocean. Laughter through tears in the audience. Isaiah smiling that small, genuine smile. But mostly, I'm going to use that money to keep doing what I love. Teaching. Building. Showing young people that your hands can change your life. That dignity isn't about how much money you have. It's about how you treat people and what you build with the time you're given. I want to say something to anyone watching this who's been cheated, who's been stolen from, who's been betrayed by people they trusted. I see you. I know what it feels like. And I want you to know, holding on to bitterness will destroy you faster than the people who hurt you ever could. But fighting for justice, not revenge, justice, that will save you. That will give you purpose. That will let you sleep at night. People in the audience nodding, crying, holding each other. Jerome Wellington stole 42 years from me. But in his final days, he gave me something more valuable than those years. He gave me vindication. He gave me acknowledgement. He gave me the truth. And that's all I ever really wanted. Not his money. Not his property. Just the truth. Just someone saying, yes, you were wronged. Yes, it was real. Yes, you deserved better. So to Jerome, wherever you are, I forgive you, brother. I forgive you because holding on to anger would poison every good thing we're building in your name. I forgive you because your daughter and your nephew had the courage you couldn't find. I forgive you because at the end, you tried to make it right. And trying counts for something. It has to count for something. The entire room on its feet. Applause thundering. Not polite, performative applause. Real, deep, visceral response to witnessing something profound. That press conference was watched by 14 million people in the first week. Isaiah Tremaine's words about forgiveness, about justice, about truth, resonated across every community in America. Because everyone knows what it's like to be wronged. Everyone knows what it's like to want acknowledgement. And everyone wonders if they'd have the strength to forgive the way Isaiah did. Isaiah Tremaine died on September 3rd, at age 79. He didn't make it to 80, but he made it long enough to see everything he'd dreamed of take root and grow. Funeral procession through the Bronx. Thousands of people lining the streets. Not celebrities or politicians, regular people. The families from Wellington Tremaine. Students from the vocational programs. People whose lives Isaiah had touched. His funeral was held at the Lorraine Tremaine Community Center. 3,000 people attended. The mayor gave a eulogy. So did Damon Carver. So did Naomi Wellington Price. But the most powerful words came from a 23-year-old carpenter named Deshaun Rivera. Mr. Isaiah taught me how to be a man. Not by telling me, by showing me. He showed me that dignity isn't about where you live or how much money you have. It's about how you treat people. How you build things that last. How you lift others up even when you're barely standing yourself. I have a career because of Mr. Isaiah. I have a future because of Mr. Isaiah. I have hope because Mr. Isaiah never gave up, even when he had every reason to quit. So I'm not going to quit either. None of us are. Because that's what Mr. Isaiah would want. He'd want us to keep building, keep fighting, keep believing that we can make things right, even when the world tells us we can't. Deshawn placing a framed photograph on Isaiah's casket. The original photo of young Isaiah and Jerome at the Wellington Heights groundbreaking. Coming full circle. Isaiah was buried in Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx, right next to his mother, Miss Lorraine. His headstone is simple. It says, Isaiah Marcus Tremaine, 1947 to 2026, builder. Teacher. Truth teller. He never stopped believing. The headstone. Fresh flowers covering it. People still visiting months after his death. But Isaiah's real monument isn't in a cemetery. It's in the lives he changed. The Wellington Tremaine Community Initiative now houses 360 families. The vocational programs have graduated over 2,000 students, with a 96% employment rate. The Legal Defense Fund has won 47 cases for people who were cheated in business deals. The Second Chance Initiative has placed 300 formerly incarcerated people in skilled trade jobs. And the movement Isaiah and Damon started? It's spread to 17 cities across America. Community-first development is no longer a crazy idea. It's becoming standard practice. Because Isaiah proved it could work. Not in theory. In reality. With actual families in actual homes living actual better lives. Damon Carver, now 52, giving a speech at a new community development in Brooklyn. He looks older but more peaceful than he did 5 years ago. People ask me if I regret giving up my wealth for this. If I miss the lifestyle I had before. And the truth is, I don't even recognize the person I was before I met Isaiah. I thought success was measured in net worth and Forbes rankings. Isaiah taught me it's measured in impact. In lives changed. In truth told. I'm worth 1/10 what I used to be worth financially. But I'm worth infinitely more as a human being. And I sleep better now than I ever did when I was a billionaire. Naomi Wellington Price, working at the Legal Defense Fund, helping a young couple who've been cheated by a contractor. My father spent 42 years running from his guilt. I spent my whole life enjoying the benefits of his success without questioning where it came from. Isaiah gave both of us a chance at redemption. Dad took it at the end of his life. I'm taking it now, while I still have time to make a difference. The Wellington name used to mean wealth and success. I'm trying to make it mean something better, integrity and justice. That's the legacy I want to leave my children. The Wellington Tremaine Community Center at Golden Hour. Children playing, families gathering, students learning, life thriving. So what's the moral of this story? Is it that good people eventually win? That justice will prevail? That truth always comes out? Maybe. But I think the real lesson is simpler and harder than that. The real lesson is, you can't change the past, but you can refuse to let the past define the future. Isaiah couldn't get back his 42 lost years. But he could make sure his loss meant something. He could transform his pain into purpose, his betrayal into buildings, his suffering into scholarships. That iconic photograph of young Isaiah and Jerome, side by side, arms around each other, full of hope. Then dissolved to the photo of Isaiah and Damon embracing on the stage. Past and present. Pain and redemption. Jerome Wellington spent 42 years living with guilt. But in his final days, he found the courage to tell the truth. And that courage, late as it was, imperfect as it was, saved his soul and changed thousands of lives. Damon Carver could have protected his wealth and his reputation. But he chose his humanity instead. And in losing his fortune, he found his purpose. Damon teaching a class at the vocational center, showing young people architectural plans. He's wearing a hard hat and work clothes. He's never looked happier. And Naomi Wellington Price could have stayed silent. But she chose her father's final wishes over her family's pride. And in that choice, she found her own strength. Naomi at a community meeting, listening to residents' concerns, taking notes, making things happen. A leader in the truest sense. 3 people. 3 different starting points. 3 different relationships to wealth and power and privilege. But one choice that united them, telling the truth, no matter the cost. The sun setting over Wellington Tremaine. The buildings glowing gold. The community thriving. Isaiah Tremaine walked into an auction house on 5th Avenue 5 years ago, looking like he didn't belong there. He was wearing a worn jacket and carrying a tattered bag. And everyone laughed. Everyone judged. Everyone dismissed him. But in that bag wasn't money. Wasn't desperation. Wasn't confusion. In that bag was the truth. And the truth, when it's finally told, when it's finally acknowledged, when it's finally acted upon, has more power than all the wealth in the world. The bag, sitting in a glass case at the Wellington Tremaine Community Center. A plaque below it reads, "The bag Isaiah Tremaine carried into the Grandmont Auction House, February 14th, 2021. Inside, the truth that changed everything." So the next time you see someone who looks like they don't belong, someone who looks lost or poor or out of place, remember Isaiah Tremaine. Remember that dignity isn't about designer clothes or luxury cars or the right address. Dignity is about truth, about courage, about refusing to let injustice have the final word. Final shot, the community at twilight. Lights coming on in windows. Families gathering for dinner. Students leaving the vocational center with new skills. Children laughing in the playground. Life, hope, future. Isaiah Tremaine was betrayed, stolen from, and forgotten for 42 years. But in the end, he won. Not because he got revenge. Not because he got rich. But because he transformed his pain into something beautiful. Something lasting. Something that will outlive all of us. They laughed when the poor man entered the auction. But they're not laughing anymore. They're learning. They're changing. They're building. And somewhere, I like to think Isaiah and Jerome are finally working side by side again. Building something in a better place. Partners again. Brothers again. At peace. In memory of Isaiah Marcus Tremaine, 1947 to 2026. And Jerome Marcus Wellington, 1950 to 2024. May their story inspire us to choose truth over comfort, justice over revenge, and community over profit. Always. Thank you for watching this episode of Lifetales by Sally. If this story moved you, please hit that subscribe button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the most valuable things in life aren't for sale. They're built with truth, courage, and hands willing to do the work. What would you have done in Isaiah's shoes? Would you have forgiven Jerome? Would you have given the property away? Let me know in the comments below.